Welcome to the WealthGenius podcast, brought to you by the Expand Wealth Real Estate Fund. Expand your wealth by investing in apartment buildings. Go to expandwealthfund.com to book your info session. The WealthGenius podcast, strategies for multifamily real estate investing, mindset, community, success. The WealthGenius podcast with your host, the godfather of real estate, Alfonso Cuadra, who has expansive experience in business and massive success as a real estate investor. The WealthGenius podcast. Let's dive into today's episode.
Good. Chad, look, I always wanted you on this podcast. We met, I would have to say, back in 2022.
I think that's when it was.
Yeah. And, you're always talking about industrial. And you brought in a multifamily guy on your show, and then we hit it off, and you've come to our conference a few times, and I love this space. I think going into AI, going into district sorting centers, going into Amazons, and kind of where everything is shifting. I think this is definitely a subject matter in real estate where not a lot of people, there's not a lot of content. We don't know where the content is, but you wrote a book. And so let's start there. Tell us about, and we'll put it up here for people to see, Industrialize. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I got into the business 20 years ago, and similar to a lot of people, I knew nothing about industrial real estate. I wanted to do commercial real estate, so I thought it'd either be offices or retail, that sexy element of commercial real estate, not dirty warehouses. Wasn't even on my radar. But the office that I joined, they were heavily involved in industrial real estate, so it was just a natural fit. And fast forward, I've started buying properties myself in 2014, and now with partners and some debt, we've got 160,000 square feet of property. So wide assortment of properties. But the cool thing that I really like about industrial real estate and why I was able to put this book together is I've had my own podcast for the last 5 years, and I've interviewed.
Shout out the podcast, by the way. And what episode am I?
That's a good question. You probably would have been around 75.
Wow. Okay, so check out episode 75 because that was the best episode, I'm sure, on his podcast.
It was a crowd pleaser.
But share the podcast and kind of where we can find it.
Yeah, it's just the Industrial Real Estate Show. It's not a very original name. That's pretty much.
But it just says what it is.
It says what it is. There's no sugarcoating it. And yeah, we had the opportunity to interview a number of people. We've done over 150 episodes now. So took what I've learned in 20 years and then also compiled it with 150 some episodes of the best and put it together so that there is actually a guide, so that if somebody does want to learn more about industrial real estate, instead of trying to figure out where you have to go, there's actually a book now. Well,
the thing about this particular niche in the industry is that even for me, I'm going to be honest, it's just scary, right? Because you go to some industrial parks and you'll see some vacant, industrial unit, and it's vacant for a very long time. And so, that I think in the lack of information and education, that is what keeps most people away, which is probably a good thing in many cases because you don't want people that don't know what they're doing in this space. But maybe I'm wrong, like what is the one thing that deters people, and do you want people, everybody involved, like multifamily or, where there's like multiple offers and, a lot of people in the space where it becomes competitive? Or do you want to kind of have this little niche, just you and a few folks?
It's interesting you say that because I've said that before as well, is that industrial real estate should scare most people. Because having that healthy amount of fear will help you from being that dumb money. Nobody wants to be dumb money, but if you get into an industry, it could be anything. Mm-hmm. Crypto is an example. If you get into crypto and you don't fully understand it, it can be devastating for you. And I think industrial real estate is similar. If you don't understand what it is, you can make some big risks, things can backfire. And a story actually on the topic of a vacant property. I had one property last year, the tenant was coming up for renewal, large single tenant building, which would be of the value of, call it a 15-unit apartment building, one tenant in there. And we thought the tenant was going to renew, and the tenant gave us notice that they were not going to renew. So we had a 6-month provision in there that they had to give us notice. So we had 6 months to fill that up. Otherwise, that entire building would have been vacant. And then we had the property taxes, we had the mortgage, the insurance, everything that goes with it. And we were looking at a vacant building, and our expenses were $25,000 a month on there. So can you imagine $25,000 a month of a burn just because you lose one tenant? Whereas if it was a 15-unit apartment building, you lose one tenant, you still have the other 14.
And that's what I love about the multifamily space. But one of the things that attract me the most is the triple net rents.
Yes, and that's the beauty of this story, is it did have a happy ending. We actually ended up leasing it to another tenant for more. And it's like you said, it's on a triple net basis. So now we have one tenant in there. We did another 5-year lease with this new tenant at higher rates, and they have to pay all the operating costs in addition to the rates. So that's how a triple net lease will normally get structured, is tenants pay property taxes, building insurance, common area maintenance, and management fees over and above the net rent, as opposed to multifamily, which is usually a gross rent and maybe 1 year. So we have 5 years with a really large company here on a triple net basis, where any increases in those expenses get passed through the tenant. So there, on one hand, that was a very scary thought, to be thinking we'd have $25,000 a month burn if we couldn't fill it. But on the other hand, now that we have a tenant, we have essentially no issues for the next 5 years.
So how do you protect yourself? Is it like reserves that you put on the side? How long should you expect to be vacant for? What are the things that you have to do?
I think the biggest thing is that you really need to understand every building and almost anticipate that it's going to be vacant at some point. It might be vacant. It might be occupied for 20 years. It might be occupied for 1 year, but every tenant is eventually going to leave. They're either going to consolidate or move or grow or shrink. Every tenant is eventually going to leave. So I think as long as you understand what that building is, you'll be able to have comfort in knowing that there's other tenants that will lease it. The biggest mistake that I've seen in my career is people that buy property based solely on the lease. So they might think that the tenant's going to stay there forever. And if it's a heavily customized building, if that tenant eventually leaves, those buildings can stay vacant indefinitely. I know a story actually of an investor that did that. He bought a property that had a long-term tenant in there, and when they left, the property sat vacant for 4 years, and it just went into foreclosure.
Wow.
Because it was 4 years vacant, and they just couldn't afford that burn rate anymore.
Yeah.
So ideally, if you understand the market and you follow it well, and you have that 6-month lead time that a tenant's going to give you, in that case we did. We had 6 months to find another tenant, and we were successful. But if you have the wrong asset, and that's where I think it comes back to that dumb money. If you're dumb money and you don't really understand what you're buying, that underlying asset, and you're just focused too much on the tenant, then I think you're putting yourself at a lot of risk, and it can sit vacant for a while. What
are the things that we should look for? Like, is it location? Is it policies? What are the things that we're looking when it comes to industrial properties, like specifically?
Just like every asset class in real estate, location is so fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
I think me personally, I'd be very leery to invest in smaller markets. I like large cities. I like cities that have diverse labor forces, university programs, even government programs are helpful because it provides an underlying base of employment.
That's so interesting, because in multifamily, as long as you're supported by a major market, people usually sometimes to get a bigger space, have a lower cost of living, they might live about a 45-minute to an hour drive from a major market. So from a multifamily perspective, you could actually invest in like the secondary or tertiary markets, but you wouldn't suggest that with industrial.
There's investors that have and have done well by it. I just like knowing that there's a lot of potential tenants out there. Mm-hmm. And if you get into the smaller markets, there might only be a dozen or so large companies that are in that market. So if one leaves, it can take a long time to backfill one of those spaces. Whereas you're right, in multifamily, people are very versatile, and they'll move and they'll make that commute. In industrial real estate specifically, transportation costs are 50 to 60% of expenses for a normal distribution company, whereas rent is 5%. Yeah. So for them, they're going to try to maximize the real estate so that they're lowering their transportation costs. So it does become very centric. And you see in any market you go to, you'll find industrials clustered into 2 or 3 main groups in the city, and that's by design. Their suppliers are there, their customers are there, major transportation routes. That's why it's a built-up infrastructure and system in place, and that's why I'd be leery to go to a smaller market, is because it just lacks all the cooperation and the synergy that gets created when you're around other companies.
I'm so fascinated with this niche. I'm gonna give you an example. So, we've kind of focused, like we're like focused on like really big projects and the things that we do because of that reason. And maybe the habits that my wife and I have are different than other people's habits, but we want everything to come to us, right? So she'll be the first one to tell you, Instacart. She lives by Instacart. I think we had like. Hun, what was that thing that you ordered? It was like they came with like that one thing, contact lens solution. They just show up like with one packet, to our house, right? I think, and maybe you're gonna be probably more of you'll probably have more of an opinion on this. I think that we're moving towards a society where everything comes to us. And so we don't need the, AAA real estate. We don't need that, that retail spot. We don't need that grocery store. I think things are going to move to more industrial. And I could even see a future where you have a grocery store completely in an industrial area, where they're just sending things to people's houses. People are not going to go and shop, take 2 hours of their time to go to a grocery store. Things are just going to be in an industrial area, and grocery stores, restaurants. Like they have you heard of ghost restaurants?
Ghost kitchens.
Kitchens, yeah. And those could all be in an industrial area, and they don't need that AAA real estate that's going to cost them 3, 4, 5 times the price. And so I feel that everything is going to be more where things come to us. The experience is how fast can you get it to me? And people aren't going to those AAA retail spots. What do you think?
I think that's spot on. I think that's a great insight into it. And as a consumer myself, I'm the same way. Unless I need something that I want to try on, whether they're shoes, Jordans, some guy has some Jordans. Unless I wanted to try something on, I don't want to go through the whole procedure of driving to the store, going through a parking lot, trying to find a spot to park, going inside the store, looking for it, standing in line, and then doing the whole thing in reverse to get home, when I can just click something on my computer and it gets delivered right to my house. So I don't go to stores virtually at all anymore. So I think 2020 accelerated that trend.
Yeah.
It's been growing since the early 2000s but we even had mail order delivery back for people that might remember, like Sears days, right?
Consumer, what was that? Consumers?
Oh, yeah, what was that one?
What was that? What was that? Consumers catalog?
That's
Yeah. I remember that. I used to cut it out of. Used to get these catalogs at home, and I had like all the extra parts to the Nintendo.
Yep.
So I had the Nintendo, but you could get the glove, and you can get these things. I would cut it out of that Consumers and save my money, and go to that Consumers, and then you buy it, and then they either have it in stock somewhere or. But it wasn't a retail space. You just go to. There's like a one guy in front of a like a warehouse kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
But remember those mail orders, the problem with it is it took 6 to 8 weeks to get it. I remember you'd always see, you're like, oh, I want this. Well, I'm going to get it in 2 months.
By the time you get it, you forgot about it.
You forgot about it. So that's why that never really took off. But Amazon and others have gotten so efficient now that in some cities you can have 2-hour delivery. And it's not uncommon to have 1-day delivery or overnight delivery, or 2 days is even now if you have something that's 2 days, you're like, oh, that seems crazy. I have to wait 2 days for it. Whereas we had to wait 6 to 8 weeks 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's getting better. The companies are investing even more in how can they get things quicker to you. That's why you'll see some warehouses going up closer to where houses are. The whole reason, those are just fulfillment centers.
Yeah.
Somebody orders something that is in a fulfillment center already 10 minutes from your house. As soon as they can get a truck and have it delivered to you. So I think it's the same thing. You can have something delivered to you almost as quickly as it would take you to go through the hassle of having to go through a store.
Yeah.
I think more and more people are just going to continue shopping online.
What are some of the industries that have recently have converted to that model? What are some of the industries that maybe I don't know about, or that are new to you, or that you're seeing? What are some of the trends?
Well, I think direct to consumer is becoming a lot bigger as well. So Amazon is still an intermediary. It's not a whole lot different than Walmart, which also does a lot of online shopping. But if you go to a Walmart's just selling things for other people. That's what Amazon is doing as well. It's just e-commerce platform. I think the direct to consumer is growing in popularity as well. So that could be WealthGenius. You guys have a product. You have a book like this. Instead of me selling this book, or you guys selling a course and having it on Amazon or having it on another platform, you're selling it just direct to consumer. So I might have 500 of these in my garage.
Yeah.
And instead of paying Amazon to sell them, I might just go direct to consumer. Now, if you scale that, think of all the different industries out there that want to go direct to consumer and avoid having to pay that third party. All of a sudden, all this new warehouse space is going to need to be needed. It's a weird statement. But think of everything, clothes that we wear. All these companies are all trying to sell direct to consumer. Any website you go on. So you go on, great blazer, by the way. That is an awesome blazer. Let's say you wanted to buy that blazer and you knew the brand.
Yeah.
You could go to the store,
Well,
or you could go to Amazon.
I was in and I rarely go into the mall. There just happens to be a mall across the street where I live.
Yep.
And the company, I can't remember do you remember the company, hun? So it was going out of business because, crazy rents in the mall or whatever, what have you. And this was discounted, right? I was like, this is like $1,000 blazer. It was like $300. I was like, what? Give it to me right now. But what's gonna happen to all these retail spaces? Because when you go direct to consumer, you cut out a lot of people. You cut out like those AAA property, the employees that have to sit there and talk to people and whatnot. And what's going to happen to all of that?
You bring up a great point, and I don't think this is on enough people's radar, is not only these buildings and the employees that are working there. What about property taxes?
Mm-hmm.
Right? These buildings, these large shopping centers and big retail, they pay a lot in property taxes. So if they start struggling and they start losing tenants and the value goes down, the city, all these municipalities, which most of them are just terrible at organizing and spending money. They all spend way above what they actually should be. They're very inefficient. How are they going to get this property tax revenue now? If the value of these big shopping centers goes down, are they going to go to the residential market, or home tax is going to go up, or industrial property tax is going to go up? It's not a great environment to be in, but I don't think a lot of people in municipalities are thinking about this, that if retail does slow down, and I think that there's still reason to be optimistic about some parts of retail. I wouldn't want to claim that retail is just going to die altogether, but I think retail has probably peaked. So if that happens, and you lose all this employment, and these stores start going vacant, and then you start losing that property tax, where does the city start getting the property tax from? So it's important questions to be asking, but I don't think enough people are talking about it.
Well, there's going to be a time where there's going to be a lot of conversions. Mm-hmm. Though the beauty about, well, first of all, let's talk about those the big retail spots like the Walmarts. They're probably going to be converted into sorting centers because they already have the real estate. And they're actually positioned really well within the neighborhood, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, slowly maybe they'll have a little retail storefront. Well, once in a while, someone will come in and ask a question, and nobody's going to know how to answer that question. But, everything's going to be going to people. And then some of the office spaces and those box stores, I think some of that stuff is going to have to be converted into multifamily. That's just my assumption. There's obviously a lack of housing in North America, so I could see that happening. But yeah, it's gonna get ugly for a while. Like, obviously it's not gonna be a complete halt. But slowly I could see things going more industrial, which is why I love this niche. And you're like right there. You're like the pioneer. What really caught my eye is that thinking about. I've always thought about industrial, and mostly because every time I've ever seen industrial, the prices are always low. Like, it's always like, oh, but I don't know anything about it. I'm not going to jump into something I don't know. But you focus on that. Like, what, like, is it like what inspired you to like focus like on this niche specifically? Or do you only focus on this?
I only focus on it. And it's interesting because, like I said earlier, I had no intention of doing it. It wasn't until I started getting into it, though, and just seeing all the different types of businesses. Because, yes, you could have a big distribution center like Amazon, which might occupy a 1 million square foot building, and that's just racks and racks of storage. There's not a whole lot to get excited about. But you can also find factories that make anything imaginable. So I toured the Boeing factory a number of years ago in Seattle, and that was just an incredible building, a 4 million square foot building where they manufacture planes. And once you just, and that's an extreme example. There's 2,000 square foot buildings where there might be a machine shop and they just have a single CNC machine in there. The full spectrum of just people making things. And I sort of looked at it as it's the wheels of commerce. That's really what is making our economy tick, is everything flows through a warehouse. The book was printed in a factory, then it probably was in 5 different warehouses on the way to get to me. You start to look at industrial real estate is just everywhere, but you don't see it. It's everywhere and nowhere because it's tucked away for the most part. But once you start really understanding how many different types of businesses are there. I was in a building the other day where the company, all that they did was repair old arcade games and pinball machines. So their warehouse was full of 50, 60 different machines in various states of repair. And I just remember thinking, I've been going through buildings for 20 years, and I never would have thought that there's a business that just services these old vintage arcade games, but here it is.
Yeah.
And they were super busy, and they had more, they were out of space. They didn't even have enough room for all their arcade games that they were trying to put in there.
I wonder if they have Double Dragon.
Remember
the old Double Dragon?
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat.
I remember seeing the Pac-Man, the Pac-Man with the wheel on it.
Yeah, that's bringing me back to like 7 years old. So I love this. And by the way, I'm going to give you some props here because I would say it's not a real book unless someone can hurt you with the book, And this is a serious book.
Duty.
Yeah, this is heavy duty. And where can we find the book?
It's on Amazon, naturally, and it's also on Barnes & Noble and Indigo.
Nice.
You can access it there as well. I know some stores are carrying it, but it's a pretty niche topic, so it's best to find that online.
Yeah. And what's the one takeaway that we're gonna get from the book here? Because I see, you got pictures, you got warehouses. What should I expect to get out of the book once I read the book?
The one thing that I really want to emphasize with it is that it works for brand new people into the business. It gives an introduction, but I've got a chapter on drainage. I have a chapter on electricity. I have a chapter on loading. So it really goes through the full spectrum of what is industrial real estate all the way to being really detailed. I think the biggest takeaway that I would have for it, and if the only takeaway that someone gets from it is that industrial real estate is much more than just 4 walls and a roof. And I think that a lot of people just think of that as they just think, oh, it's a warehouse. It's just, there's 4 walls in there and a roof, and that's all that it is. There's so much more that goes into it that I think anybody that reads it would really come away with a much better understanding of the industry.
Well, I was investing in multifamily, we're talking about more than 20 years ago, 26 years ago to be exact. I started my real estate journey. And because I was talking about multifamily before people even, people just wanted to buy a duplex kind of thing or a triplex, and I've been doing it for so long, they call me the godfather of real estate, or the godfather of multifamily. But ladies and gentlemen, We have officially found the godfather of industrial real estate, because you are definitely someone that is promoting the space and has niched down on something really, really interesting. I want people to go and check you out. So you'll get a lot of the show notes, a lot of the Chad's information on the show notes, where to get the book. And, even if you're not in this space, I definitely would encourage anybody to find out more, because you never know when that opportunity is going to be there. And I always tell people, look, you're better off being ready for the opportunity and not getting the opportunity than you get the opportunity and you're not ready. So thank you for coming on the show. Leave us with something inspirational that you live by personally.
One thing that I'm very true to is I never stop learning. And that's been 45 years that I've been on this planet. I never stop learning. So I'm always reading. In fact, I probably read more now than when I did when I was in university. And that's market reports, that's studies coming out. It might be a magazine on a business topic. I just read a ton. And I think being a constant learner, just like you said, it prepares you for opportunities that come up. And I think that was so well said. And I think that weaves very well into it, is just never stop learning. There's always something you can learn.
Well, I know what I'm going to read tonight. And thank you so much. And that's the show. Alfonso loves you. And we'll see you all at the top. Woo!